Okay, so on the little Courier here, there's some questions about the hoses routed when I installed the carburetor. So sorry about all the bike here, kind of tight space, but I'm just gonna kind of go over that a little bit. So first and most frustrating is the Hitachi. I don't know for sure, but it seemed to have a fuel pressure regulator built in. Look, I have it over here. So the fuel would come in, and there was the float in there, obviously, and there's a little like spring and check ball in here, and I don't know for sure that it's a fuel pressure regulator, but it looked a lot like I would expect it to. And then fuel came out into the return line, and the Weber does not have that. Focus. Okay, so the Weber doesn't have it. It just has the inlet. There's no outlet. And there's no pressure regulating device in there that I'm aware of, or I could have just done it wrong. But so I had to put in my own regulator with a gauge, obviously, so I know what I'm regulating it to. And I tried one of the cheap ones from Advanced Auto Parts, and it just, not having a return on it, just wasn't getting the job done. It wasn't actually regulating pressure. It just, maybe the pump's too strong and it was overcoming it. I'm not sure. But it kept flooding the carb, so I had to get one that has a return on it. And so I have this is the inlet just coming from the factory fuel line down there from the pump going up to the fuel pressure regulator, and then the return line's down on the bottom, and I just have it go back to the return line on the factory fuel metal fuel lines there. So there's a slight chance it would change before I got it, but this has never had a mechanical fuel pump. It was always electric. So when you turn the key on, the pump would turn on. It's a pretty simple way to figure out which one's the inlet and which one's the return. And then obviously the regulated fuel pressure line, you just bring on over here, and I had to kind of loop it around and do some fancy stuff to get it to the fuel inlet. And that was also the biggest added cost to installing the carburetor, was getting a good fuel pressure regulator. But it's been working really well ever since I got it, and it runs a lot smoother, because everything I found online says these Webers are supposed to be really sensitive to fuel pressure, and it was running a little bit rough when I first put it on there. So I got this in there, and it's working a lot better. And then the PCV hose, or the PCV hose from the valve cover, just routed it. I actually I needed two of the little ports on the bottom of the air filter, so I had to drill another hole in the back, so I have a second one, and I don't know where to buy those, or I'd tell you. We just had an old Weber in the back of the shop I was able to pull that off of. So the other one that's going into the air filter is leading back to the evap canister, so it's going to have fuel vapor in it. It's not really ideal to just tee into the original hole, because it's going to make the fuel vapor go back into the valve cover and the crankcase, and that's going to cause issues going down the road, or potentially cause issues. So that's why I went through the extra effort of having to drill the hole. It's kind of a pain, but it's worth the time. And then the only other one is that the other PCV hose that goes down to the actual block closer to the bottom. You can kind of follow the line down, and then it kind of disappears down there. It's the dirty one, all the way at the bottom down there. And it goes down to the block, and I had it come up, and I pulled it off where it goes onto the intake manifold. I just put an elbow in it, and I ran it down to the ground like a road draft tube, and I just kind of wedged it. Oh well, I don't have enough light, but it's just kind of wedged there next to the frame. That's how they did it in the 60s, so not much before this was built. And let's just try and keep the engine running a little bit cleaner, or not cleaner, but I'm just not reburning the oil. And I just essentially just kind of capped off. I didn't have a cap that fit the fit the outlet on the manifold, so I just put a little hose on there with an adapter that brought it down to a size of cap I did have, and that's just because I was using what I had laying around. And if you also have a Courier, that means you had the mechanical choke or the manual choke. So I just routed that, used one of their supplied fittings to mount the cable, and it just works the choke. So, although it starts pretty well, just half choke. And then this cable goes over, it was routed, or this cable here was routed around and to the EGR valve right down here. I disconnected it because the EGR hose also, well, that's for the air pump actually, I'm sorry. The air pump is also long been disconnected. It was causing issues back right when I got the truck, making it backfire, and I'm not really sure why that was doing it, but when it got disconnected, it stopped. So, but I think that pretty much covers anything. If you have any more questions, just let me know. I mean, I've probably put about 500 miles on it since I put this carburetor on it, maybe even a little bit more. And it runs fantastic. And with the probably not properly running Hitachi on there, I was getting like 12, 13 miles a gallon. Now I'm up to between 20 and 22, depending on how much highway I'm doing, because it only does like 55, 60. So yeah, like I said, if you have any more questions, just let me know, and I'll try to answer them as soon as I can. And good luck. Okay, so forgot to mention how the fuel was how the throttle was hooked up. So here we go. I actually, right on the side of the Weber there, it had the throttle shaft sticking off, and I was able to just loosen that nut in there, pull it off, and then this assembly right here is from the Hitachi. So everything, well, I have a little like grommet on there to help take up some of the play. But yeah, this is all factory Courier stuff all the way up until about here. This base plate's factory Courier. This return spring was included with the Weber kit, so I used it just to help give it some snap back there. And then that was also installed from the factory. But yeah, so I mean, it's mostly, I mean, you can kind of see there what looks old and what looks new. Old, new. So it works pretty well. The stud or whatever it is sticking out of the Weber was already flattened on two sides, so it fits well, and the linkage from the factory throttle linkage, and I mean, I'm missing a couple of bushings in there, so there's a little bit of play, but it doesn't cause you any issues. So hopefully we covered everything. If you have any more questions, just let me know, and I also have a full install video of going through it and just doing the nuts and bolts. So